Well, welcome back. My name is Jim Kaseman, and we're talking about how to get to know God intimately. We've been sharing these last sessions about my testimony, and hopefully I don't get too confused here. But go back. I was in the hospital for 2 months. I was released from the hospital. Ended up writing a note to this nurse back in the big hospital back in the capital city. She responds. I end up getting released in the hospital. I get a hitchhiker ride to Bismarck, North Dakota. And on a double date, met my wife for the first date on April 15th, about the middle of April, 1964. And then we got married in June 2764. So we're only 2.5 months that we were dated and then got married. And we've been married now for over 56 years. Well, now I'm married, got 2 kids, and of course I'm still drinking and getting really bad. We did marriage concert with this particular pastor, and then, as I recall, we were talking about how I had this appointment with the pastor. The night before I got drunk, on November 1st, I guess that would have been, told him where he could go. I wasn't going to show up for my appointment the next morning. The next morning I wake up hungover, chug like a can of beer, get my eyeballs back in my head, and I end up keeping my appointment. And I guess last time I had shared how I sat across the desk from this pastor and I said, I think I know what my problem is. I've fallen away from God. I'm not born again. I don't know God, never read the Bible. How could I fall away from him? So then the pastor went on to share that he compared alcoholism to cancer. Now, Jim, if you had cancer, we'd send you to the hospital, we get the cancer removed, then you come back to the church and we get spiritual, is basically what it's all about. So he said, compared then the hospital to this treatment center. It was a brand new treatment center, 100 miles south, Mandan, North Dakota. And so I listened to it and I'm just kind of laughing inside. Oh, come on. I'm only 24 years old. You can't be an alcoholic at 24. That's an old man laying in the gutter in a big city. Well, I went home and shared it with my wife and we both laughed. But little did she know, I was already planning on driving back to that same bridge for the second time to hit it and kill myself. That's the second time. Can you believe that? Now I have 200 miles to drive instead of 100 miles. So 100 miles south, on the way to the bridge, halfway to the bridge, I decided to check out this treatment center, see what that's all about. Now, again, I don't, inside I'm looking for help. I don't want to kill myself. And so I no sooner got into the treatment center at the front desk there, and I don't know what happened. They got my car keys, and next thing I know, I'm checked in a local hospital. Because there's a new treatment center, they didn't have a detox tank, and so they kept me in the hospital for 3 weeks for detox, and then back to the treatment center. So my last drink then would have been November 2nd of 1967. January then, of course, I'm exposed to the 12 steps, the 12-step program in the treatment center. And I remember how, one of the things we had to do was we have our 5th step. Really, you write down all your sins, and then you confess it in front of, in this case, it was a Lutheran pastor who was the chaplain of the treatment center, and all things like that. And 2 of my roommates, if that's what you want to call them, were 2 Catholic priests, and I was the youngest one in the treatment center, because, like I said, that was, in those years, that would be an old man in the gutter somewhere, but not a young man at 24. So I turned 25 years old in December while I was in the treatment center, and then I was released New Year's Day of 1968. So then we attended we attended the Alcoholics Anonymous chapter, and there every time we had a meeting we'd say, my name is Jim K., because it's anonymous, so you don't mention your last name. My name is Jim K. By the grace of God, I've been sober the last 24 hours, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And once if I quit these meetings, I'll get drunk. I'm just 1 drink away from a drunk. What a wonderful confession. Well, I did that from 1967 all the way to 1972. Now, in between those 5 years, I guess you'd say, it looked good. And while I was in the treatment center, Normally when people would come out of the treatment center, they send you to vocational rehabilitation for 2 years to become an auto mechanic or electronics technician or something to get a job. But they found out I had 2 years of college, just about 2 years. I flunked the last quarter because of drinking. And so they did 2 years of college. So I went year-round overloads, 4 quarters a year, and in order to make up for those courses that I flunked. And I switched from pre-engineering to psychology because I wanted to be a counselor like everybody else does when they come out of a treatment center. And so then I ended up, of course, I was a first lieutenant in the Army National Guard. I'm an engineer officer. And so I graduated from the college or university in Minot, North Dakota in the spring of 1970. And so I decided then, being I was an engineer officer, I would go through the career course, which was 9 months in Fort Belvoir, but I was also battalion communications officer at the time. And so I decided to get branch qualified in communications on my way to Virginia. And Kathleen was able to go with me and the girls. And so it was a nice year of active duty. I enjoyed the military. Kathleen really enjoyed it. And so I graduated from there in 1971. And then ended up back in Minot, North Dakota. And of course, I've got a job. I'm staying sober. We're getting marriage counseling. I haven't had a drink since November 2nd, 67. Everything's looking really great. Now, remember, in 1967, I was on my way to the bridge for the second time. That was the mercy of God that I ended up in that treatment center. But now, here I am. And now I'm in April of 1972, been sober for 5 years. Never had a drink. And of course, we had some AA. There was 2 couples in AA that took a liking to Kathleen and I, and they never let us out of their sight. And I found out years later that their philosophy was that if you can keep a man sober for 18 months, then chances are he'd never have another drink for the rest of his life. So they, for some reason, liked us. And of course, my wife was instructed, if Jim gets stinky thinking, then you bring him down to the treatment center right away. You come down right away. Well, we did that I don't know how many times, made that 114-mile trip one way. And finally, this one time, she says, stinky thinking. And I was supposed to get in the car and go with her to the treatment center. And I said, no, I'm not going. You're the one that's the problem, not me. And she did what she was told to do. This couple took her to the treatment center without me. And she got some counseling. Now, the other man, he followed me all day long. He followed me everywhere. In those years, they didn't have cell phones. He had a big telephone in the back of his truck with a big antenna, But, at one point in the afternoon, I went into the local tavern. I ordered a 7-Up. No alcohol, just a 7-Up. He comes right in and sits right alongside of me. I mean, he wouldn't let me out of his sight. So 8 o'clock that night, they come back with my wife from the treatment center. And we all end up at my house, our house. And again, we're talking till 1, 2, 3 in the morning. That wasn't the first time that we did that. But see, God sent those people into our lives to help keep me stay sober long enough till eventually I get saved. But anyway, here I am now. Everything looks really great. Graduated from college, graduated from the career course in the military, and now I'm a first lieutenant and a company commander and all that sort of stuff in the military in the local National Guard unit. And so, but I'm planning, guess what? I'm not drinking, but I'm thinking, what's the use of staying sober? This is just sheer willpower. What's the use? So I started planning to hit the bridge for the 3rd time. I don't know, that's impossible. Got this love affair with the bridge. And so then, this was on a Thursday, in March of 1972, that I decided to do this. And so I began to make plans to hit the bridge the following Thursday. Well then, what happened on Friday, the next day, after I decided to do this, here we've got my neighbors knocking on the door because their pastor told them to do so. And I'll share with you what they were told to do in the next session. Looks like we're running out of time. God bless you. Be blessed in everything you set your hands to, and we'll pick it up in the next session.